Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. Hope you're doing really well. This is my team selector preview, thoughts and feelings ahead of tomorrow afternoon's game at Stamford Bridge against the recently crowned champions, as bad as it is to say, Liverpool. There's been a lot of discourse about the Guard of Honour, which I have to say, don't really care that much about. I don't really think you should care that much about. What really matters is what happens after the Guard of Honour, which of course is whether Chelsea can beat Liverpool in the Premier League for the first time in many years. And we'll get into some of these numbers in terms of big games, not only against Liverpool, but how monumental tomorrow could be if Chelsea do show up, if Chelsea were able to get the 3 points, and I think what it could mean for the whole complexion of the Champions League race. If you are new round here, we do regular Chelsea content, reacting to Chelsea news, match previews, match reviews, collabs with other Chelsea creators. So please do like and subscribe and join the Son of Chelsea community, not just for the rest of this season, but heading into the Club World Cup and of course pre-season, and then right back into it for next season. The football never stops. So this is a huge game. I think that in some ways I understand why people haven't looked at this game as, not that they haven't looked at it as a priority, but maybe looked at it as, well, it's unlikely Chelsea are going to gain maximum points, so we have to look elsewhere. But given the way things have worked out since the international break, this has become a game that I kind of think Chelsea have to win. Because you look at the results of everyone else, and yeah, sure, we do face both Nottingham Forest and Newcastle, which means if Chelsea don't win tomorrow, it doesn't mean the end of the world, because then you could recover that potentially. And we've been aided by some of the other results that we'll look at. However, I do think that if Chelsea were to beat Liverpool, I can't see a scenario where Chelsea win against Liverpool and then don't go on to qualify for the Champions League. Because I think the momentum, the psychological positive impact that would have, not only on the group of players, the head coach Enzo Maresca, but the club in its entirety, I think would be pretty huge. Because it would be the first time since March of 2021 in the COVID season that Chelsea have beaten Liverpool in the Premier League. Just pulling out some more stats here. The last time we beat Liverpool at home in the Premier League was as far back as May of 2018. We are almost 7 years to the day. It was very early in May of 2018, right at the end of that second season under Antonio Conte. So it's been a long time just beating Liverpool in any game, but also in terms of the big teams. And I think, yeah, we beat Man United last year, but if you look at Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal, who have kind of been consistently at least the top three, or, deemed probably the three best teams in the Premier League in recent years in terms of just their ranking and consistency, you have to go back to August of 2021 when we beat Arsenal away from home. So you think about how much has changed at Chelsea, you think about how much has changed at Arsenal, you think about how much has changed at Liverpool and Man City. It's been a very, very long time. And it doesn't sound tactical. It doesn't sound logical in some ways. But you kind of think at some point, surely this form is going to turn around. And momentum is kind of the word that's coming to mind at the moment. Because Chelsea, the way they were able to turn it around very late on against Fulham, which, completely turned around the mood of that game and the mood of the season. And then, of course, beating Everton last weekend, winning against Stuart Gordon, which I know to most people was an expected win, but I think there were positives about that performance. And then you look at the fact that the late win beat Everton and going into this game, and then Nottingham Forest in particular, losing 3 of their last 4 league games, of course, losing to Brentford on Thursday. As we saw this time last year, Chelsea benefited and maximised the wave of momentum that led them all the way towards that end of the season that was very positive under Pochettino. And potentially what's happening here is a similar thing. In a tight race for Champions League qualification, where just looking at the Premier League table, really, I think Man City, although of course Chelsea and the teams below can still catch Man City, it's only a 4-point gap between 7th, with Villa beating Fulham today, and Man City in 3rd. I do think it's between Newcastle, Chelsea and Nottingham Forest. Those are kind of the 3 teams I'm looking at. Villa, of course, still in there as well, but something about me kind of feels that those will be the 3 at the end of the season that will be sort of still vying for it, at least in my opinion. But we're very close now. And of course, a turn of form, a few wins here by one team and a few defeats could mathematically seal it in the space of a couple of weekends. That is how close to the finishing line we are. So I think momentum may be going in Chelsea's favour. However, the opponent is the toughest you can have in the Premier League this season, which of course is Liverpool, who have just won the Premier League title, deserved winners. Arne Slot's done an incredible job given taking over from such a massive figure in Liverpool's history. And I think what his success kind of shows is the brilliance of a well-constructed squad and the ability of having such a well-constructed squad and an older squad. We spoke about this in my news show about the average age. They are 17th in the league for average age. They have one of the older squads, and you look at the maturity of the players within that group who've been together a long period of time, who've won a lot together, who know what it's like and know how to get over the finishing line. That is, something we talk about a lot with Chelsea, the lack of experience being an issue. However, even with all of the threats, the major threats that Liverpool have, the good record against Chelsea in the main, we do know once you've won a Premier League title, there's always that question mark over levels of intensity, levels of performance, the changes and rotation that naturally comes. And Arne Slot has already hinted that there will be changes at Stamford Bridge on Sunday. I'm not entirely sure how vast they will be. I think the team that will face Chelsea is still likely to be a very good team. Even some of their replacements you could deem would start for Chelsea, because that is the level of squad we're talking about here. So I can't quite believe Arne Slot, especially, Chelsea away is still a game that Liverpool will not want to lose. I can't quite believe they're going to want to come to the Bridge and just kind of throw it away, even if they have been celebrating the week. But I don't suspect it's going to be a blowout where Chelsea are going to turn up and face an unrecognisable Liverpool team. However, it's those percentage points, right? Like, if we faced them when the title was still up for grabs, compared to psychologically you're facing them when it isn't there anymore, they have achieved it, they've reached the top of the mountain. Is there some leeway? Are there going to be some drops in sort of intensity from key players? And that is where Chelsea, if they're at their best, can capitalise. I think that's the huge thing. But, you're looking at the obvious names here. Mo Salah has had a ridiculous season. Top scorer, biggest chances created, highest XG, highest expected assists. And obviously it's massive. He's staying along with Virgil van Dijk, even if they are likely to lose Trent Alexander-Arnold. If you look at overall their stats, they have less possession this season than Man City and Chelsea, but they're top for goals per match, top for XG, shots on target, and sixth for accurate long balls. So although Slot at times has brought in maybe a shorter passing, more composed, controlling game, I think he very much has lent on what worked under Jurgen Klopp, which was, and just the ability of the individuals there. Like, if you've got Mo Salah and you're trying to hit diagonally with the quality of Virgil van Dijk, why would you not want to utilise that? So I think there's been a blend of what the coach has wanted to bring in, which you can't discount, but also what Liverpool had as a great foundation. And I think that's why they've been able to benefit so much this season, whilst others have really struggled. So the tactical battles for me are obviously more on I'm not saying, midfield and up front, but I look at those wide areas for Liverpool, and particularly the way Salah will cut in, and those combinations, his ability to drift in, kind of float in. And, Salah, people criticise him for it, but he's a ridiculous goal scorer, is that he can go through long periods of a game without touching the ball. But he touches the ball in the most instrumental, effective areas. And that's what makes him one of the best finishers in world football. So those wide battles are going to be, I think, massive for Chelsea of trying to shut them down. And obviously in midfield, having the intensity, having the ability to work around Liverpool's press, who, Liverpool are not a low block team. They're going to come and try and be progressive at Stamford Bridge, you suspect. Even though there has been some variation to their game, which I think is why has made them one of the shrewder teams in the Premier League this year. So for this lineup, I think the biggest question mark I have is regarding Romeo Lavia. Lavia played no part in midweek against Djurgården. He played a substantial, much more than we suspected, against Everton. And we were really impressed by what we saw from Romeo Lavia. And you look at this type of game and you think, not only when Lavia has been present this season, Chelsea look like a better team, but against a team that are going to press you, his ability to evade that press, to play forward passes instinctively and precisely into the feet of, say, an Enzo Fernandez or Cole Palmer, Chelsea's ability to turn defence into attack. I can't help but feel Lavia is a good tool to have for this game. But then you also have that, there's that, thinking, for me of at right back, because what's likely going to happen if Lavia starts, Caicedo will play that kind of fluid right back / central defensive midfield role. And although I think it's been successful at times against maybe narrower teams, I think Spurs, it was back in December, I think really exploited it, because what you have against a team like Liverpool, who do have those wide threats, who are going to find those spaces, is you're effectively asking Caicedo sometimes to do about two jobs, and whether it's just better to have Caicedo maybe in a more central area where he has the freedom to roam out wide if you need him, but you've got a more natural fullback there. And that's kind of the battle I'm thinking about for this game is, do you start Reece James, who came off at half-time, I thought actually looked quite good in midweek, or are you starting Caicedo and Lavia, something that Maresca has done a lot. Further up the pitch, is there an argument to move Palmer out wide? My instinct always tells me at this time of the year, coaches are unlikely to radically shift away from what they've already done. That's not to say it can't happen, but my instinct is telling me that it worked last weekend. I think Lavia plays a great role in Chelsea's build-up. And I also want Chelsea to be forthright in this game. I don't want Chelsea to cower in fear. I think that's been my biggest issue in so many of these games, is people, the Arsenal game is the most recent, but it was a very, very obvious example of this, of Chelsea offering absolutely nothing for any of us to get excited about. Such an insulting performance on what should be one of the more important games. And the way we so meekly surrendered, it felt like early into that game, and then offered nothing, is unacceptable. That cannot happen against Liverpool. There has got to be an incentive that there is a win here, and if Chelsea can get it, I'm not saying it's easy to beat the champions. Obviously, that's farcical. I'm not saying it's a simple job of just turning up. But what I'm saying is, if Chelsea can win tomorrow, the benefit and gain for the club, I think is, I don't think I can underwrite that. I think that could be massive. So I'd like Chelsea to be smart, but also be progressive in some of the selection choices Maresca makes. So yeah, Rob Sanchez, if he's fit, because obviously he's had some injury concerns over recent days, but I think if he is fit, he will start. Although credit to Jorgensen, he did make some impressive saves on Thursday, but obviously Sanchez has made some impressive saves in recent weeks. I feel like most people want to see Reece start, but my instinct is telling me that Caicedo will start. So Caicedo will play this right back / central midfield role. Trev and Levi, I think, will be the back two. They have been kind of the Premier League back two. I think that will continue in this game. Marc Cucurella at left back, obviously against Mo Salah. Hard to know sometimes how, Cucurella has this ability where he can, I've seen it against Saka. He can very much unsettle a wide player, a real wide threat, by getting very close to him, touch tight, just being awkward. But obviously Salah, I think, is obviously a better player than someone like Saka and many of the attackers Cucurella has faced recently. This is another level of player. So if he does start, it's obviously going to be a big test, but it's going to be one of the key battles of the game. Lavia, I think, will start with Enzo Fernandez, so that gives Enzo the license to hopefully move a little bit forward and pick up the positions, if he can, that we've seen in recent games that makes him more of a creative threat, which has gained him credit this season. Then the attacking side of the pitch. I mean, in terms of recent performances and recent form, it's quite tough actually, because you could argue that Jadon Sancho deserves a start here because he's contributed to goals. I think that Noni Madueke, I'm always bigging him up because I just think the numbers don't lie. And I think in a game of this nature, I'd want him to start. Cole Palmer is obviously longing for that goal. He is probably the weakest in terms of end product recently. However, he's still creating opportunities and he still has that kind of name, right? Against Liverpool, you want Cole Palmer on the pitch. And how big would it be for him to break that record, that long wait for a goal tomorrow? So I'm going to go with Pedro Neto on the right just because he had a full week's rest. I think he's been prepared for this game and Maresca likes playing him. Although sometimes his production is lacking. I think he'll start on the right here. Palmer, I think, will start as the 10. Again, we're not radically thinking outside the box of what Maresca has done all season. I think he'll stick to doing that. I might be wrong, but that's my instinct. And I wouldn't mind seeing Noni Madueke continue at left wing. I was really surprised and encouraged by what I saw from him. Of course, again, different caliber of game, but in some ways it might actually be of benefit to Madueke against Trent Alexander-Arnold on the left side of Chelsea's attack. We know the flaws that Trent has defensively, and I know people get frustrated, Liverpool fans specifically get frustrated that people bring them up, but I don't think they're hyperbolic. It's not calling him the most atrocious defender ever, but we've seen in a number of occasions him being done by good wide players. And I just wonder, if you're looking into this game and Chelsea have transition opportunities and more space to exploit behind Liverpool's defence and midfield than you would against Everton, right, who are going to sit deep. I just wonder whether Madueke could have a real field day and maybe be really influential, because I just think he deserves a start in a big game, and I think this is one for him. And then, of course, Nicholas Jackson, who luckily over the past week heading into this game at the perfect time has suddenly found his scoring and shooting boots again with 2 finishes, obviously, against Ojua Gordon. The second was wonderful, and of course a really good finish against Everton. We will need that. It's not, if I sit here in like 24, 48 hours time and Chelsea haven't beaten Liverpool and it's a 1-1 draw, I'm not going to sit here and go, of course, the game can turn out in a variety of ways, but I won't say it's a disaster, but I will think it's a missed opportunity, absolutely, because I just think that at some point we've got to have one of these big games go our way, because I just think it gets buy-in and it gets positive memories, which I think means so much. And I think for Enzo Maresca, if he's a coach that could beat Liverpool tomorrow and get Chelsea a massive win at a key point in the season, you think about the amount of positivity that will be around that ground, the amount of credit he will gain from that. And probably, I'm not saying he's going to win everyone over, but he will gain, I think, a lot more respect. Absolutely. How could you not for actually Chelsea winning one of these big games for the first time in a very long time? So that's kind of my feeling and theory about this game. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Are you dreading this? Are you actually a little bit more optimistic after recent results? There's just something about me, and it probably is delusion, I have to say, that makes me think maybe, just maybe, this is the day. And it won't be easy, it'll be tense, it'll be rocky, but maybe, just maybe, this turns out to be an afternoon when Chelsea show up and are able to do something. Again, point is not the end of the world, because Forest have dropped points. Maybe they'll drop points again against Palace. Maybe Newcastle will drop points. But I think it's crucial that Chelsea, from a mental and kind of performance point of view, have to walk into that game next weekend against Newcastle feeling like they've competed seriously against Liverpool. I think if Chelsea do what they have for a lot of the big games this year, I think a lot of people's which would inevitably lead to a loss. I think a lot of people's confidence and kind of increased belief in recent days and recent weeks since we've started to win games again would massively decrease, and I think that is a massive worry at this late stage of the season. So please do follow, subscribe, give me your lineups in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.